Hello, beloveds. Welcome. We have a juicy and expansive, possibility-filled session here with the beautifully magical OneDrea Pennington, Dr. OneDrea Pennington Badzio, who is formerly known as Andrea Pennington. Welcome, beautiful soul.
Thank
Yes,
you.
yes. Mm-hmm. Dr. Wondrea is an American integrative physician, founder of Soul Sense Alchemy and the holistic health company and media platform, Innate Vitality, which integrates modern neuroscience with athletics, music, and conscious media. She is a certified psychedelic-assisted therapy facilitator and psilocybin retreat leader and creator of the cornerstone process for conscious evolution and attunement meditation. How fabulous is this? Dr. Wonder has risen repeatedly from the ashes of societal expectations, as you can see, and personal adversities. There's so much more you can learn, follow all the links, do all the things, but let's welcome you and be together. Hello.
Hello. Good to connect again.
Mm-hmm. Yes, good to connect again. I'm so excited to dive into the power of psychedelics during menopause, which is what we really were so excited to talk about. And also, the last time we sat together has been nearly 7 years, and I've gotten to, from a distance, witness this rising from the ashes yet again. I'm sure, I mean, I know it wasn't the first time, but it's been really beautiful to witness. So, will you just take us through a little bit of this sort of going from Andrea Pennington to one Drea journey?
Yeah, well, it's actually been a lifelong journey, even though there was a very distinct shift. I've been living now in the south of France for going on 14 years. And since leaving the United States and my big media career, I've really stepped onto this shamanic medicine path,
Mm-hmm.
exploring different modalities of healing. And mainly because I had a near death experience in 2005. I don't know if you remember that, but I had an out
Wow.
of body experience where
I'm starting to.
my entire life shifted. And the
Mm-hmm.
thing about that was I had never heard of anyone having a near death experience without being nearly dead or in a coma or under anesthesia. And
Mm-hmm.
that led me to really search the literature. And I started finding out that cultures around the world have these methodologies of helping people at various turning points in their life, certain rites of passage. There could be a ceremony, whether that's with drumming or sacred medicine or chanting or whirling or dancing or prayer and fasting. There are these rites of passage that will help people get into these expanded states of consciousness, like
Mm-hmm.
what I experienced spontaneously here on the French Riviera. And so over the years, I've really just been deepening my exploration of sacred practices around the world as I was preparing for another documentary film. As I was shooting this film, I happened to sit down with a beautiful medicine woman, Soul Whitefire, for my resilience film. And at the very end of our interview, she said, "Hey, we're having a ceremony tonight, and you and your production assistant, you're welcome to come."
Mm-hmm.
At that point, I had already sat with the medicine ayahuasca in Peru, and I was invited into this mushroom ceremony. And it was so profound. We could go on and on about that, but it really gave me this new relationship to explore with this sacred medicine. You know, they call them the little teachers, the folks from Mexico. And so it's been just an exploration. After I had that experience, about a year and a half later, I decided to try microdosing. At that point, I'd heard so many people were doing it for creativity or for focus. And I was curious. Where I live in the south of France, we can get them from the Netherlands, where I host my retreats. And so I started. Now, along the way, my physician at the time was listening to me talk about this. And she said, it's really interesting. You should be blogging about this because you're just entering menopause. And some of the things that you're noticing while you're microdosing, there might be a connection. And so I started to track my progress. Now, I was on bioidentical hormones at the time,
Mm-hmm.
but
Mm-hmm.
adding in the psilocybin truffles and mushrooms, I noticed that my mood was better, that my focus and concentration was better. And it led me again down this rabbit hole of research. And I don't know if you realize this, but there's not a lot of research about women's health with any psychedelics. And
Wow.
when you look at menopause in particular, there's not a lot out there. So I started writing for my own research, and I discovered that there's some really key things that we need to be aware of. So, for example, we know that 75% of women who enter the perimenopausal space will have some sort of symptoms, right? So, whether that's the hot flashes, vaginal dryness, brain fog, mood swings, poor sleep,
Mhm.
interrelational conflict, there's this whole host of things. And we know that it's tied to our dipping and dropping hormone levels. Well, there's interesting things when you start to look at hormone replacement therapy. Now, of course, not all women are candidates or even want to get on hormones, but it's
Mhm.
important to know some of the mechanism of action of hormones when you're
Mhm.
looking at menopause. For example, increasing blood flow to the brain, increasing things like BDNF, which is this neuroplastic factor. It's called neurotrophic um, brain derived neurotrophic factor. And so when you have BDNF increasing and estrogen is helping with blood flow, we see that women benefit. Well, guess what? Psilocybin, which is the active ingredient in truffles and magic mushrooms, has very similar effects. It increases blood flow to the brain. It has this neuroplasticity effect by increasing BDNF. And so it hit me
Mhm.
like, wow, I'm getting some of the same benefits that estrogen gives for women who want to do HRT. And so it had me thinking, what would happen if women who were entering perimenopause or any place in the menopausal sphere, what if they were microdosing? And so this is
Mhm.
one piece of study, a research study that we are embarking on now to take women where it's completely legal and they've been cleared medically to do so, to start to identify, is this really a period where we might see benefit? And so
Mhm.
that's kind of where I've been over the last several years. The whole name change and shaving my head, well, that's a whole nother story.
Oh my gosh, I don't think we can let that go. Well, I love what you're saying about the blood flow to the brain. Like I was sharing with you right before we came on was just this it's beginning to come into my own personal space. And I have a dear sister who's recently trained in feminine qigong, and she's just swearing, she's like, we need to get on a call. I need to teach you how to store the energy from your ovaries into your brain before your ovaries check out. And so
Mm.
I keep thinking, oh my God, we need to get on this call. We need to do this. I did this Qigong course with her. And now again, here you are talking about this. And so you were supporting yourself with the microdosing during that process. Yeah.
Yes.
And so when you do the research, are you planning that the candidates will be on HRT also, or that they will
They don't have
that
to
they're
be.
just
No.
gonna okay.
So we will have them get their own labs through their
Mm-hmm.
physicians to find out where they
Yeah.
are within the menopausal sphere. And
Right.
then these are women who would have been microdosing anyway. We're not prescribing anything, but we
Right.
want to see for those who choose to, what strain are you taking? Because that makes a big
Right.
difference. How much are you
Yeah.
taking? And
Yeah.
if you are taking HRT, we're asking them to be tracking their symptoms throughout this experience, to see what
Mm-hmm.
changes. Because it's not
Mm-hmm.
just, drive a JJ that drives women crazy in menopause.
No.
It's the mood
Yeah.
swings, it's the brain fog,
Yeah.
it's, being irritable. And we know that psilocybin has been shown to help in these areas. So we want to track that as well.
Hmm. Wow. I'm curious, have you ever worked with Amanita, the Amanita mushrooms?
No, I haven't. Mainly
No.
because they're illegal, and so we try to stick with everything legal within our company.
Yeah, there's a microdose company. I'm pretty sure it's legal in microdoses because we just get it online, my husband and I. But we are oh my God, I'm so grateful for this microdose. We've been through such a pretty challenging cycle of like moving family across bodies of ocean and all of these things. And
Yeah.
oh my gosh, the Amanita, I mean, I'm really grateful. So I'm
Wow.
really curious because I think we were both microdosing, oh, kind of on and off with the psilocybin, and then the Amanita. Um, I don't know, just kind of like something to consider. I'll share a website with you later that you might be able to have your own experience with it. So coming back to you and the transformation that is leading you here, was that psilocybin experience where you were invited, was that part of what led to the shaving of the head and the OneDrea? Like, how did that all come about? Because it seems like there was a soul alignment at a greater level that just kind of clicked into place.
Yeah. Well, that experience with the mushrooms was just before the COVID pandemic. And as
Mm-hmm.
we went into COVID, that's when I started microdosing. Um, there were a couple of factors that came into play with sacred medicines. First off, I lost two dear friends to suicide. And that just sent me through a loop of grief. And I
Yeah.
was invited to sit with sacred medicines to process that. Also, during COVID, my mother had a stroke and she was in America. I was here in France, couldn't fly there. And the doctors told me it wouldn't even work if you did. You can't get into the ICU. Plus, your mom is going to be gone within days. So don't even bother. So I once again was invited
Wow.
to sit with a sacred ally. And what
Wow.
was interesting is that I connected with my mom's soul. By that time, I'd gotten a ticket to come to America, and I said, hold on, I'm coming. And I was in conversation with her all during this heroic dose of psilocybin mushrooms. After she transitioned, so I made it to America, I got to say goodbye to my mom.
You got
She
to say bye. Okay.
transitioned. Yes, yes. And then I sat with ayahuasca. And this was
Mm-hmm.
another opportunity to not only connect with my mother's soul, but I connected with the souls of these two people who died by suicide. And I
Right.
got to really look at not only my grief, but I was angry. I was really
Mm-hmm.
angry at them. And I got to process that in this experience, which was huge, and to return to a state of compassion for the suffering that they
Mm-hmm.
experienced. And then I was invited back to this particular retreat center in Costa Rica where I was the guest speaker. And I was invited to sit in ceremony. And I thought, I'm doing pretty good. Life is good. I'm feeling great. But okay, I'm going to just see what comes up. What can I work on in these ceremonies? And at that time, it was my relationship with my teenage daughter that came up, which
Mm-hmm.
was a total
Mm-hmm.
surprise to me because our relationship was good, but in this ceremony, all of my past mistakes as a mom were just front and center. And I was feeling so much judgment and shame, and it was horrible. But it wasn't breaking. Like normally, you drink ayahuasca and you purge. You like there's a release. I had had 2 cups, 3 cups, nothing helped. So I went up to the ayahuasquera and I was like, I'm really suffering. I'm not purging, and I'm just in this loop of reliving everything that I've said wrong to my daughter, and I'm just like in full guilt. And so she did a special blessing and gave me a little extra cup of the brew. And when I went back to my mattress and had my experience, all of a sudden I could feel all of this energy coming up. And what was really interesting there was in in this state, I saw a vision of me as a baby. And it was a particular baby photo that I remember where I'm sitting on my dad's lap. And I just locked eyes with this little baby version of me and was filled with such compassion. I said, of course, knowing that you grew up in that trauma, all of this darkness and heaviness in the household, of course you grew up to be this woman who was overparenting in this way and doing this in this way. And I felt so much compassion for the baby version of me that the purge came. And I was like, oh, okay, grab the
Right.
bucket. For those of you who know, you know. And as I started to purge and release, I could sense that I was letting go of all of the trauma and the imprints that I got from my parents during that really
Hmm.
toxic
Hmm.
part of my infancy. And as I was literally purging it out, I said, wow, that whole lineage is going in the bucket here, and I'm not going to be the same.
Hmm.
I'm continuing to heave and heave. And as I went back to my mattress to lay down, I knew that that whole storyline of what I'd been carrying was leaving me. And I knew that I was going to have a name change. I wasn't sure if it was going to be my Tibetan name that my Lama had given me when I became Buddhist or what. But shortly thereafter, I realized that it was Deus OneDrea is my full name. I announced it to my husband and to my daughter, and they were like, "Okay." And so it was a really big transition for me because it allowed me to mark this turning point of letting go of that trauma history
Hmm.
and really fully embracing a new trajectory, a new future. So that's what happened with the name change.
Oh, I really thank you, first of all, for sharing that with us. I'm sorry about the loss of your friends. I've been through that
Thank you.
with a friend. I know exactly what that is. And and also not to project anything onto you, but it was beautiful to see from over here because it was like watching someone step out of the matrix into their true identity, even though you were already like so awesome. You know what I mean? You
Thank
were
you.
everything that you are, right? We're always encoded with who we are.
Yeah.
But it was I was like, oh wow. Woo. And that was so beautiful. And so really wanting to anchor this piece of your vulnerability and transparency around the personal leadership journey that you were on, and specifically the listening to. You said my life is pretty good, right? Life is pretty good. I'm doing great. I'm going to go to the ceremony, and that takes a a really self dedication and commitment to the path to even do that. Wow. I'm, yeah, I'm just feeling into the weaving of these threads together because there's so much reinvention that I see sisters coming through when they go through menopause. And it's not a 1 day event, right? It's a
No.
premenopause, then it's menopause, and it's a whole. And so I'm curious if you would speak to that kind of maybe what you see with other people and even with yourself around this rebirth that's available and how we can usher ourselves through it.
Yeah. I actually love it. I love reinvention. I love all of the different turning points and rites of passage that give us this opportunity to step into a new version of ourselves, a new archetype. And I find that for some women, going into menopause really can feel like a dark night of the ego because the
Mm-hmm.
ego is saying, well, who am I anymore? What about this body, these
Yeah.
relationships? And with ageism and sexism alive and well, it's like, do I matter anymore? But it's a beautiful and ripe time to tune in and find out who are you really. Just as you could witness that, my trajectory of being programmed, living in the matrix, and having a moment where you go really deep and start questioning all of your programming, all of your beliefs, and then really tuning into your values to say, well, who do I want to be as I live forward? And that's where the reinvention comes. That's where it's no longer a dark night of the ego, it's the dawn of the soul. And the soul is leading us into this next era of our lives. And I find that the reinvention that happens for most of us, if we can really like accept it, it gets super juicy. It gets to be this bold and passionate second half of life. And when you think about it, you're probably going to live 30, 40, maybe 50 years more. And for most of us, we start thinking, well, heck, first 30, 40 years, maybe they were decent, maybe not. You've made some progress, but imagine if you could consciously evolve, who would you be in this next era of life? And that reinvention is a process that I really love. I've been able to reinvent myself a number of times because I had a media career, and you're always like branding and thinking about the character that you embody. But when it comes to authenticity, that tuning into values, and then what is the legacy or the imprint you want to leave, it gives this whole new energy to menopause. And I really believe that women can reclaim a sense of vitality. There's so many ways that we can maintain the vitality of the body. You've talked about Qigong. We can use acupuncture and herbs. There are psychedelics for those who are in alignment with that, and bioidentical hormones if that works for you. But once you start to get this alignment of your physiology and your energy, the sky's the limit. Like for most of us, we realize, okay, all the drama that I've been carrying for these years was all manufactured. It was manufactured in our minds. Some of it was programmed in there, but then you have this moment of realization, like I get to choose. I have been an artist most of my life, but I kept it pretty suppressed because of my programming. And after one of those ayahuasca journeys, I could feel the artist in me coming forth saying, give me a microphone. Stop trying to suppress me or fit me into this box. And I started writing music. I would wake up with music in my head. And one of the songs that I recently wrote is called Zero Fucks, Zero Fucks to Give, because I woke up and I realized all of this pressure I've put on myself to try to fulfill other people's expectations has not even satisfied them. It's only stressed me out. And so it's like, no. From this point forward, I have zero fucks to give to these entities so that I can live in a way that makes me feel proud as a woman, as a human, as a mom, as a wife. And that's the power that I think menopause offers us if we take it.
Well, I think that was a really key thing that I think we could all stand to hear about 1,000 times, trying to please those people that is never going to please them. And it's only stressing me out. And the gift of being able to give zero fucks. I mean, it's really a gift because I think it can feel so elusive. Oh, I'd like to give no zero fucks, but how do I do that? Please tell me how to do that, because sometimes we find ourselves so entrenched in certain relationship patterns. So was there a letting go of humans and things as you claimed OneDrea and the artist came out and all of that?
Oh, yes, absolutely. And that I'm glad you're bringing that up, because as we move through phases of life with reinvention, you are generally stepping into a different embodiment of your soul essence. And that means it's going to create a whole new resonance or not. You're going to resonate potentially with new people. Some of the old people in your world might not vibe with it. And a lot of people don't evolve because they don't want to let go of who they've been or the relationships or the status. And so I'm glad you bring that up, because for me, yes, when I got to, I have another dear friend, and before she turned 50, so she sends me this message saying, I've got 15 summers left. And I immediately call her and I'm like, what are you talking about? And she said, when I look at my parents, 15 years from my age was when their health challenges really set in and they weren't able to travel and do as many things. And she said, that means I've got 15 summers left. And it caused this shift to think, well, why am I putting off this? We have a tendency to just say, oh, I'll do that next year. Oh, maybe in 2 years. So it's important to know that we have a finite amount of time. And you get to think, how do I want to live the rest of my life? And without being morbid, you also get to ask the question, how do I want to die? We can choose consciously. I'll tell you another little quick aside. My mother transitioned in 2021, as I mentioned. And in her early 70s, she started to show signs of dementia. And by the time she was in her 80s, her short-term memory was pretty bad. And I remember showing her on my laptop, I showed her my first TED Talk. And she was all engaged, as if it was happening live. She was like talking back. And at the end of that, she said, wow, I can really tell that you are doing the master's work. She grew up a good Catholic. And she said, and you know what? I'm ready to go. I miss my mom. I miss my sister. She talked about the people she dated and how she partied and how she had, risen up the ladder. And she said, I have no regrets. And that struck me, because I, at the time, really felt bad for her. I felt like, gosh, she was this feisty West Indian who now was completely dependent on others. But she didn't see it that way at all. She said, looking back at my life, I lived the way I wanted to, and I have no regrets. And that really has struck me because I had to ask myself, if I were to die and meet my maker, would I be going out with any regrets? And I think that's the question I invite people into, especially as you're going through a life transition, whether that's empty nest or you're coming out of burnout or you're transitioning in your career, really reclaiming your sovereignty and deciding how do you want to live and die.
Mhm. Well, and what I hear so much in that is the relating to what brings us joy, like even what you shared about the artist, and waking up with the music. Because when I'm listening to you say that, what I'm tracking is my joy. Did I lean in enough to the things that truly bring me alive? And certainly there's my work. I have a lot of, dharma that is aligned in my work and my children. And then there's so much more. There's so many things that bring us joy. And gosh, I feel like that's the thing that I hear when you're saying that.
Yeah, well, that's a big one for me because there was so much time that I sacrificed my joy to be the good girl, to follow all the rules, to check all those boxes. And now I'm feeling like, heavens, I need to be living in joy. And especially as a model to my daughter. I want her to see that you can prioritize joy and living with purpose.
Mhm. Yeah. As we're getting in, we've been together for a little while. I want to ask you also, because you have had a media career and you've been public facing, and like I shared, I got to watch you, go through your transformation as many of us did. What can you share about that part of it, where you're in leadership, you've already said yes, there's already people looking to you. What was coming up internally around, okay, it's all about to change. You're gonna get a very different frequency. Here you go. Like what was coming up inside and how you were navigating that.
Well, you know what's interesting? It started for me as leadership as a mother before it was the outward facing thing. My pregnancy and then giving birth to my one and only child really shifted. I mentioned my mother. When she had a lot. And she wasn't emotionally available either. And so when I had my daughter, I knew I did not want to mirror the experience that I lived. So I had to really tune into self leadership. How can I be compassionate? How can I overcome some of the things that were programmed into me? And it was really I think my daughter was 5 when I really sat down and said, okay, now I'm ready to get back out there into the world. But I knew that who I had been on television was a very one dimensional character. Even though I was myself playing a doctor on TV and doing documentaries, it was a very limited slice of who. It has to be in full alignment with the authentic me. Because I didn't want to be like two different people, one on TV and on stage, and then another one at home, because she would see that. I knew that I had to model that. And so for me, in terms of my leadership, the only thing that had been important to me was how I was feeling internally on a heart level. And as I tuned into that, I could just show up authentically. Um, it's definitely been weird, but I think living in France and not having as much of the media presence gave me a sense of freedom to just be myself. And I didn't expect to be leading others and leading the real self-love movement, because I would have thought, oh no, if I'm going to lead some nonprofit, I need to be, this, not tattooed and piercing and wearing a mohawk. And yet I'm working with people all over the world who are saying, no, this version of you, this authentic version of you, that's what resonates. And I think that requires courage for a lot of people, because we have to get out of this in the box thinking that says that if you're in leadership, it looks like this. If you're a CEO, it must look like this. That's just not true anymore. I think our world is evolving. You've seen this in your school. There is a consciousness shift that's happening. I'm seeing people that I would have never dreamt would be spiritual, and they're getting spiritual. And I don't mean like woo woo out there, like they're having a true spiritual experience of their lives. And so I feel like leadership is changing in that way as well. And if we tune into our authentic values and who we truly are, then we can lead from that place. And the right people who are aligned with that mission will be there to support you.
Thank you. Yeah, what I hear really so much is, and what I'm present to as you share, is the importance of having your husband and having your daughter and having that, that almost like incubator of the essential humans, the immediate humans that are essential to just mirror us back and say, yeah, I see you, I got you, okay, go for it. And then it's like, okay, I can just resonate here and move forward from what's authentic and true. And so I say that because if you don't find yourself, if you're tuning in and you don't find yourself to have that immediate tight-knit people that are going to resonate and reflect you back, then it's just even more important to establish that connection with source and build as urgently as you can the most trusted, immediate inner circle that's going to reflect back the highest, so that you can keep reinventing, because I think it can be really challenging to hold an identity, project an identity, and then everybody's bought into that identity, and then it's like, whoosh, wait, I'm actually really resonating over here, and these people are so invested in this, and my ego is so invested in this, and I want to go over here. And so how essential it is to have that immediate circle around us that's going to say, yes, we see you, you get to move forward from here, and we're with you. So I'm grateful you have that.
Yes, and I didn't always. I mean, I raised my daughter alone. I was 52 when I got married.
Yeah.
So definitely a lot of this journey has been solo, but I think with the sacred medicine community, with having really trusted folks around me who are not afraid to go deep, that has been essential. So you're absolutely right. Having a community of people who get it and who can support that is really essential.
Yeah, I'm so glad you say that about the medicine community, because as long as, we have trusted facilitators and those who are serving and holding the sacraments, then the community can be so essential to just have these people that see you, that witness you at the deepest level. And then there's a trust and a knowing, and you just feel anchored to a place that's like tapping into the superpower of the tribes, the ancient tribes, while we're navigating these modern worlds. It's like, oh, wait, I have this anchor over here with these people who actually know, who saw me puking my guts out, and then who saw me, come into this highest alignment, and they know. So if they know, I must be able to take 10 more steps forward.
Yes. Yes, it's the
Thank you.
key to definitely need to find people that you resonate with and trust. And I will say, we've been talking about sacred medicines, and for many people, they live in countries where they are not legal. And it's very easy to obtain things in the underground. But I want you to be mindful of your sources. There have been actually, here we are in 2024, there was recently a recall of some microdosing mushroom products because several people were hospitalized. And so you have to be really, really careful since in the United States they're not regulated. So definitely be mindful of your source and mindful of the people that you're getting things from. I can't stress that enough.
Yeah, I really appreciate you bringing that in, because I think sometimes there can be, especially with around menopause and the brain fog and the sort of like the desperation that we can come to wanting to fix something and just get a remedy going. How important it is that it's really vetted, that you go through, even if it's, psilocybin is decriminalized in, some parts of the states, but really that you're going through channels of people that this is their thing, and they know, and just really being connected to the source. I really appreciate you saying that, and I'm glad that you are in a place that you can host these retreats and you can do the work legally. I'm so grateful that you're doing that.
Yeah, it makes a huge, huge difference. Being able to work in the Netherlands and invite people from all around the world. We have a special women's retreat that is only femmes and women invited, and then we have mixed retreats. But it really gives us so much freedom to talk about microdosing and macrodosing, because we know where it's being grown. We know that it's regulated, which we don't really have in the United States. So, yeah.
How long is the retreat?
The retreats are 5 days, and so we have
And,
two
and
ceremonies.
okay. So will you tell us a little bit what happens over those 5 days?
Sure. So during our 5 day retreats, we welcome everyone first on Zoom. We have 4 weeks of preparation. I have a whole course on understanding the medicine, meditations, and journaling to really get comfortable with all parts of you. And then we welcome people on our first evening and share a meal. And then the very next day is our first ceremony. And ceremonies typically last 5 to 6 hours. Once you've sort of drunk the tea, we make a special ginger tea. Makes it very easy on the stomach. And we actually have live musicians at all of our events. So it's not just a playlist. I'm singing and drumming and playing instruments, and Renee Eva is this amazing songwriter and sound healer. And so everyone has their own mattress. They get to experience this in a safely facilitated ceremony. And all of my facilitators are trauma trained. So that's also very important. And then the next day, we have a full debriefing, integration circles, some time in nature, some alone time. And then on the following day, we have yet another psilocybin journey. So people get another chance to go deeper. You know, sometimes the first ceremony, it's like the unknown, so you're just getting used to it. And then by the second ceremony, you can go deeper or have a completely different experience. And then our final day, we have some closing activities and farewells. And then we have integration. All of that is, again, hosted on Zoom. There's private sessions with me and group sessions, because you are going to experience so many things that are, you know, out of the ordinary, that integrating that into your ordinary life, you need a container. And so we provide that as well. And it's a really beautiful experience.
Yeah, experience. How many facilitators and how many participants do you usually have?
Yeah, we limit our retreats to 12 people who are sitting with the medicine. And then we have 4 to 6 facilitators with us. So there's always a core 4. Because I run an apprenticeship, we have other people who are coming in and assisting. So it keeps a really nice ratio so that everyone, if they ever needed help all at the same time, we would be able to handle it.
And I'm so glad you're doing it that way because, you know, gosh, I've been saying this for a million years. This is my firm belief that while the sacred medicines are so amazing and we're so grateful for them, the ultimate work happens in this dimension once we get back. And so for you to offer that integration support is just feels really loving.
Yeah, it's part of my dharma. So here we go.
Beautiful. Thank you for shining your bright light. Thank you for coming to sit with us and just share so transparently about the journey. We can't wait. I can't wait to learn more about what you discover about the menopause journey and the microdosing. That's going to be exciting. I'll be keeping close tabs for myself and my sisters. Thank you so much. And I know you have something special actually for our community here. Will you share with us what?
Yes. Well, I will share 2 things. For those of
Oh,
you
yay.
who feel like maybe sacred medicines are calling to you, I invite you to join me in Sacred Psychedelic Saturdays. On the first Saturday of the month, I host a totally free Zoom community call with people from around the world where you can ask me questions, you can hear from other people who might be integrating or preparing for their sacred journeys, whether that's with me or in other countries, including ketamine. And with that, you get a whole bunch of guided meditations and preparation material if you're thinking you'd like to go down that path. For those of you who just want to reclaim your sovereignty and find self-love in your journey, I can invite you to the Real Self-Love Movement. This is, again, a totally free community, a bunch of resources taking you through the cornerstone process in my book with guided meditations. And on the second Tuesday of the month, the Real Self-Love community meets on Zoom, people all around the world. We discuss a topic, I take questions, and then I lead a guided meditation. And the attunement meditation is really, really wonderful for getting to know who you are, how you've been programmed, and then taking back your power and choosing how you're going to live forward. So those are the two gifts.
Those are awesome. Thank you so much. Yay. So you're tuning in, the links are right here. So pop in, go into Dr. OneDrea's world, and then let yourself be guided. We really appreciate you coming in, being with us. Thank you so much.
Oh, it's been a pleasure and an honor. Thank you for the invitation.
Yes, we're so blessed. Blessed. Beloved, love you so much. I know this served you. I hope you just, trust whatever is inspiring, whatever is resonating, that you just trust it and let it take you where you get to go. So much love and aloha.